I want to show you a map of Manhattan from 2010. This is from a project called Locals and Tourists, where someone mapped out photos taken by locals and photos taken by tourists. To me, this is a great example of how access to knowledge isn't access to wisdom. Just because something is online doesn't mean that you can know it. If this map were the real world, a good chunk of Manhattan just wouldn't exist. So that is something to think about when we think about being good, thoughtful consumers of information in an online space. Let me put it to you this way. A few years ago, I was standing in line in a coffee shop in a very small town in Virginia. And the woman in front of me was talking about, quote, all the crime in South Philadelphia. Now, it is unfair to generalize about a city, but if we are to generalize about a city, we can reasonably say that there is more crime in like North Philly or like far North Philly than in South Philly. But more to the point, I've walked around South Philly and multiple times. I knew it as a place. It was fine. And so, I said to the woman in front of me, like, I'm so sorry to overhear, but I've walked around South Philly. It's fine. To which the woman said, oh, I love Philadelphia. I love their museums. Which, for those of us who know, for those of us who don't know, that's one of those things where the person kind of sort of reveals what they're actually trying to say without saying it out loud. Anyway, I offer that up as an example in terms of like the difference between being in a place and knowing in a place versus like, oh, I saw something on the news, therefore it must be true. One thing to think about when it comes to being a good, thoughtful consumer of information in an online space, think about the work that goes into a piece of journalism. I wrote this in 2015, and I had extensive email correspondence with experts. I read a few books. I sat down and taped a few interviews with a few people. And then when I sent it off to my editor, they didn't just publish it. They sent it to a fact checker who then said to me, like, all right, show me in your notes where it says this. Show me on like this recording when it says this. And she reached out to the people I spoke with and to see, like, did you actually say this? Did Evan say, did Evan represent this accurately? Oftentimes there is work that goes into producing something like this. I tried to make this point years ago when I was working as a rideshare driver in a very small town in Virginia to people who were complaining about the quote-unquote fake news when it was a relatively new term. And of course, rather than engage with this, they lapsed into pointed silence. I wonder what that meant.